In the previous videos, we learned the coordination in animals, how the nervous system and the endocrine system help in the various functions in our body. Now let us learn the coordination in plants. So when we talk about coordination in plants, we also know that plants do respond to various stimulus. You can see like the sunflower changing its position, like when the flower, it will be facing the east in the morning when the sun is in the east, right? And when it is in the west, it will be facing the west, and in the afternoon when the sun is in the center or the middle, it will be facing upward. So they are responding to the stimulus. And also whenever the seed, when the seed is germinating, always the root goes towards the soil, and the shoot system always comes above the soil. So how do they come to know? Not only that, we also know the opening and closing of the guard cells, right, which controls the stomata, opening and closing of stomata. How do they respond? How do they come to know, right, that they have to open the stomata or they have to close the stomata? They should have some kind of substances which will help them to respond to various stimulus. When we talk about the stimulus, one fine example which comes to our mind is the Mimosa pudica. Mimosa pudica is nothing but a touch-me-not plant. So everybody would have touched this plant because it really fascinates everyone. Because once you touch that one leaflet, just you touch one leaflet, you can see how that message is passed on from that one single leaflet to the entire leaf, the entire, that branch of that particular plant. Okay, that will fold. It will fold and it will droop. So it could recognize the change. It could sense the stimulus, and also all the climbers. Whether we have the cucumber or the ash gourd, it has that weak stem. When it has weak stem, it knows it needs support. And how they produce that climbers, the tendrils, which will go and twine against other one pillar or a stem, and we keep one support, so it will go on, it will coil around it. See, they can sense it, so they should be having some kind of chemical substance. When we talk about responding to stimulus in plants, we should always remember plants do not have nervous tissue. They don't have a nervous tissue which will help them to respond to various changes. Then how do they respond to various changes? Only they have chemical coordination. It is only chemical coordination. Okay? So whether it is bending, coiling, or elongation, it's all because of the chemical coordination. Whether it is bending, or it is coiling, or it is elongating, all this are due to chemical coordination. So plants do have certain chemical substances which will help them to respond to various changes. They show movement. When we talk about movement, we can identify two types of movement in plants. We can identify two types of movement. The two types of movement in plants are growth dependent and growth independent movement. Growth independent and growth dependent movement. So we can identify two types of movement in plants. One is growth independent, other one is called growth dependent. Now what's the difference between growth dependent and growth independent movement? If in a movement done by a plant, it is concerned to its growth, that is growth independent. Just now I gave you the example of Mimosa pudica. Children, learn this term, that is Mimosa pudica. It is the scientific name of touch-me-not plant. It is the scientific name of touch-me-not plant. So this shows movement. When you touch it, it conveys the message, right? If this is the one of the branch, this thing, okay? And you have touched this one leaflet. One leaflet you have touched. And it has conveyed the message to all the cells, and it has folded the leaf and it droops. And after 10 minutes, it takes around 10 minutes to open up. Okay. So Mimosa pudica, it shows this movement, but whether it will help it in the growth? No. It is growth independent movement. Okay. And when we talked, I gave you the example of germination of seed. Germination of seed, it is a growth dependent movement. How it is growth dependent movement? If you don't allow the seed to grow, right? Okay, so maybe don't supply the nutrients, okay, it doesn't get enough of water, and it will not grow. So that is growth dependent movement. I hope you have understood what is growth independent and what is growth dependent movement. These examples you should know, and should also know what is growth independent and what is growth dependent movement. So let us see the first one, growth independent movement, right? That is taking the example of the touch-me-not plant or Mimosa pudica. Let us learn the growth independent movement. So what is this growth independent movement? So how do they move? See, in case of animals, it has to move. So when we talk about movement, then we know muscles are responsible for the movement. We have learned it in 9th standard, right? So wherever we see the movement, it is the muscle. So when the muscle, when it is showing the movement, there should be some chemical substance which will help it in its contraction and relaxation. You know, muscle cells are known. They has a property of contraction and relaxation. For this contraction and relaxation movement, it has some chemical, it has a protein actually. Okay, it has a chemical substance that is called actin and myosin, which will help in the movement, that is contraction and relaxation of the muscle cell. Such proteins are not present in case of the plants. Plants don't have such kind of protein. Then how do this touch-me-not plant will respond to the stimulus? When you touch the touch-me-not plant, it shows that response. How does it do? They do by changing the amount of water present in their cell. So they convey the message. It has, as I told you, they have chemical coordination. So they have their own means to respond to the stimulus. Now, how does this show? How this movement is seen? It is by altering the amount of water level in the cell. By changing the water level, amount of water level in the cell. So when they want to bring any change, either the water will be drained. The water amount of water will become less and the cell will shrink. Okay, they either shrink or they swell. Okay, so that's the guard cells, you know very well. The guard cells will swell. How do they swell? When there is water will increase inside the guard cell, they become turgid and they swell and the pore will open up. When the water level is less in the plant body, okay, so they have to control the rate of transpiration. You know what is transpiration? They have to control the rate of transpiration. How they will do? That time what they do, the water which is present in the guard cell, that will flow out of the guard cell. So when the water level will become less, they will become flaccid. Flaccid means shrinking. They become flaccid or they shrink, and this we say turgidity. Okay, turgid, right? So they sense, right? See, that's how the guard cells will control the amount of water present in the plant cell. When there is enough of water is there in the plant cell, they will swell and the transpiration process continues. When the water availability becomes less, what will happen? Rate of transpiration should become less. So what will do? The guard cells will shrink. How do they shrink? By reducing the water will flow out of guard cell and they become flaccid. So here also the touch me not plant, Mimosa pudica, also respond to the stimulus by varying or by altering the water level in their cells. So this is growth independent movement. So let us see what is growth dependent movement. Okay. So the previous, we learned the movement independent of growth, right? So we see movement in plants which in no way helps in the growth of the plant. There are movements which will help in the growth of the plant. Just now I told you, we just talked about the climbers or the pea plants. So pea plants, they develop this tendrils, the coil spring-like structure, and the money plant, money plant, and these will bend, this stem will bend and it will cling the support, right? It will cling the support of the plant. And when you just look at these tendrils, we see as though they are moving towards with the one particular direction. And when we check the tendrils, we feel as though the tendrils are growing faster than the rest of the plant. So this movement will help in there either to cling to a stem or the support, okay, which will help them to grow. So that is one kind of movement what we see. There are movement which is with respect to stimulus. There are movement, there is growth movement in response to stimulus. So which are the stimulus? Light, soil, water, touch and chemical substance. These are the stimulus and the response they show. So it is as I told you, it is directional. Directional means what? If at all it is moving towards the light, so it is directed towards the light, and if it is moving away from the light, so it looks as though there is a directional movement. That's why we call it tropism. Okay. If it is light and you see the movement, so we say that phototrophism. If it is soil, geotrophism, water, hydrotrophism, touch, thigmotrophism, chemical, chemotrophism. So here also when we talk about phototrophism, we can see they may moving towards the light or moving away from the light. For example, okay, I am just giving for phototrophism. You just take a plant. Okay, you take a plant in a pot. You grow a plant in a pot, and you keep this pot like this, upright, or we say erect. Upright or we say erect. You kept the pot erect. And what is the normal thing what we observe is always the root will be towards the soil and the stem is moving towards the light. So the stem is showing positive response towards the light. Okay. So we say positive phototrophism. Stem always shows positive phototrophism. Then what about the root? What about the root? Do you think root moves towards the light or moves away from the light? It always moves away from the light. So it shows negative phototrophism. So I hope you understood what does this mean. If the part of the plant shows or moves towards a particular stimulus, in case of stem, it is moving towards the stimulus, that is light. Light is the stimulus. So it is moving towards the light. So it is showing positive phototrophism. And this root always moves away from the light, so it shows negative phototrophism. Like this, for all this stimulus, we see both positive and negative trophism. And that's what when I talk about stem. Stem, do you think moves towards the soil or away from the soil? away from the soil. Stem shows negative geotrophism and root shows positive geotrophism. That is, you have kept this pot, they have asked in some previous question paper, they have kept like this. Okay, one pot like this and stem moving like towards the light and the root coming towards the soil. What does this indicate? You can write the stem showing positive phototrophism and negative geotrophism. The stem is showing positive phototrophism and it's showing negative geotrophism. And when you are talking with respect to root, what do you say? You say the root is showing positive geotrophism and negative phototrophism. I hope you understood this, right? So growth, movement in response to stimulus. You should learn this example, and there's one experiment which shows how the plants move towards the light. How do you experimentally, how do you demonstrate that always the stem will move towards the light? For that, there is an experiment, that is, you have to take one cardboard. Okay, you have to take a cardboard. You know the carton boxes are there, right? In that cardboard, in one place, if this is the cardboard, okay, if you take that three-dimensional, okay, figure, if this is a cardboard, in one place, in one side you make a small hole, or one side you just remove, one part you just remove it and place one plant in a pot, or just keep it in a conical flask. You know, you just take one money plant and place that money plant in this conical flask and keep it near the window. You just make one small hole, or just this much of space you allow for the light to pass through, and you are keeping near the window. Okay, you are keeping near the window so that enough of sunlight can reach the plant. And this setup we keep it for few days. After few days, what we see is that this you would have seen almost. We have to just, like, wherever you see that the stem bending, you know, here the stem bends towards the sunlight. The stem bends towards the sunlight, which indicates that the stem shows positive phototrophism. How do you think this part got elongated? You can do this experiment at home, right? Not as a part of experiment. If at all you have a potted plant, keep it in place where it gets enough of sunlight and leave it for maybe a month or two. Yes, automatically you can see it will bend. Like, you know, you have kept one a plant here. Then as it grows, you know, it will bend. It will just show this bend and it will grow like this. Okay, so this part has been elongated. This part has been elongated. You know, in some places where you see in the beaches and the coconut tree, they bend and they go, right? So we see that elongation. Why there is an elongation? When you kept that pot in the cardboard box, the stem was not getting enough of sunlight. We know very well the stem shows positive phototrophism. You know the reason, because leaves, it bears the leaves. The leaves need the sunlight to prepare the food for photosynthesis process. So it needs that light. Now, it's not getting that enough of sunlight. So what it will do, it has to move towards the light. How it can move? It has to elongate. For elongation, it needs certain chemical substance. It needs a certain chemical substance. When I say chemical substance, we know it is the hormones. Plants have hormones, right? They also have hormones, because in the beginning itself I told you, we see chemical coordination. So the plants have hormone called auxins. They have hormone called auxin. The auxins will help in the growth. They help in the growth. Now, when you place the plant here, what it will do, the hormone usually present at the stem tip, okay, it will secrete. That cells will start secreting this chemical, that is auxin, and it will be diffused through the stem. It will be diffused through the stem to the region where it is not getting the sunlight, and it will help in elongation. That's why we see the bending of the plant. Okay, so the auxins will help in the growth of the plant. So I hope you understood now what is positive phototrophism. Okay, plants do have certain chemicals which will help in their growth. So one such hormone is auxins. They also have one more hormone called cytokinin, gibberellins, and abscisic acid, and even it has one more substance called ethylene. Okay, so they have this chemical substance, that is auxin, cytokinin, gibberellins, and abscisic acid and ethylene, which will help either in their growth, or they also stop their growth. Okay, so these are the hormones or the chemical substance which are present in the plant. Okay, we'll come to the function of these hormones later. Now, let me give you one example for chemotrophism. For chemotrophism, you know that pollination, right? Pollination is transfer of pollen grain from the stamen to stigma. The pollen grains comes and falls on the stigma. It will fall on the stigma. This is the stigma. And you know, it's the female part, right? It has ovary and ovule. See, the ovule has chemical substance, and they will grow towards the ovule. That is called chemotrophism. Okay, moving towards the chemical substance, that is called positive chemotrophism. So that's about how they respond to various stimulus. Now let me give you some of the the chemicals which are produced in the plant. So as I told you, these are the plant hormones. Okay, so these are the plant hormones. So already I told you, plants don't have a nervous system, but they have chemical substance which will help them in their growth. So we should remember these hormones. They are auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid, and ethylene. Auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins, they help in the growth of the plant. So they help in the growth of stems, leaf, everything. So auxins promote growth, cell elongation. So that's how they grow taller, right? So auxin help in that. Gibberellins also helps in growth, promotes growth, that is growth of the stem and the leaf. Not only that, they also help in the increase in the size of the fruit as well as the number of fruits. Okay, so the sugar cane and all, no, they grow very well with the help of gibberellins. And coming to cytokinins, as the name itself says, it will help in cell division. You know, cell division will help in the increase of the cell, because of which they will grow taller. Not only cell division, they help in cell differentiation. By now, you know what is cell differentiation. Coming to abscisic acid, it is a growth inhibitor. It stops the growth, like becoming old, the leaves becoming old, wilting. All this is done by abscisic acid. Coming to ethylene, it is a gaseous hormone which is necessary for fruit ripening. This ethylene actually helps in transverse growth of the plant. It will stop the longitudinal growth of the plant and promotes the transverse growth of the plant. So with this, I have finished with the plant pollination in plants. Okay.